Hi, everyone. My name is Julie, and I'd like to welcome the folks who are joining us live and those who are watching the recording to the first session of our seminar series, TPACK and Beyond, exploring the intersection of educational technology with reflection, pedagogy, and research. Today's session is entitled Using Technology to Support Reflective Teaching. Today's session and the entire seminar series will be grounded in the theory of the TPACK educator. For those online live today, can I get a quick show of hands? How many of you have heard of TPACK before? Okay, I'm seeing some hands and some shaking heads. Well, Mishra and Kohler and their colleagues built upon prior models and frameworks when they popularized the idea that good educators blend skills from different contexts. They bring together their content or subject matter knowledge, or CK for short, their knowledge of good teaching practices or pedagogy, or PK for short, and their knowledge and use of technology, or TK for short. Therefore, the acronym TPACK represents this intersection between each of these three contexts. The team behind this theory has published several papers describing it, and we've included a reference here for you for additional reading. In fact, this framework is also at the core of our Teaching and Learning Center's Level Up certificate program. We know that you're subject matter experts in your discipline. You have the CK in spades. And through our program, we aim to provide resources, training, and opportunities to further help you develop your pedagogy knowledge, technology knowledge, and skills related to research and reflection. Just like the TPACK model, there are really intersections among these four levels. And today we'll explore the intersection of technology and reflection through use cases or examples that are aimed to represent a diverse range of technology use. While technology can certainly be used to help our students reflect on their learning, today we're going to specifically focus on the reflection that we as educators can do. And before we dive in, let's pause for a moment to reflect on the word reflection. I liked this definition that Leticia Britos Cavagnero of Stanford University used in a session called Enhancing Reflective Practices with AI. She shared that reflection is a whole body process of transforming experience into meaning to shape the future. And I really liked that idea. As a first example of how we can use technology to aid in reflection, I'd like to explore the idea of digital journaling. Okay, how many of you are like me and have about 8 different pieces of paper on your desk right now with separate notes that you don't want to lose track of? Okay, I'm seeing some shaking heads, I'm seeing some nods. Right, there's no shame in using a variety of tools to keep you on track and productive. But sometimes, as I'm sure we can relate to, those pieces of paper go missing or we just can't find what we're looking for. And this is where digital tools can come into play. Simply put, a digital journal is a way to organize your ideas in one place that can be accessed anywhere, anytime. It can be used to capture to-dos, tasks, and reminders, but can be used more like a traditional journal by including observations, reflections, and brainstorms. And this can be helpful both in the short term of keeping you on track and organized today or this week, but can also be a great tool for looking back. Think about how this could be a tool as you consider your accomplishments over the year for annual reviews, as you work on preparing tenure documentation, or sitting down to work on a teaching philosophy statement. Now, there's not one right tool to use for this, and we encourage you to pick a tool that fits your needs and your process. However, we want to introduce you to one that we recently discovered. In just a second, I'm going to show you a quick demonstration that I recorded of a tool called Workflowy. Workflowy uses a fractal organization system. This means that each bullet point is its own document and also that things can be opened and collapsed. So for demonstration purposes, here we're showing how you can use Workflowy to include a variety of different types of tasks and organizational systems. Let's start with this to-do item. If I expand this out, we can see that I've set up the to-do list in a board fashion. This means I have a board for today, tomorrow, next week, and in a few months. And the nice thing about this is I can move items from one to the other. I can also add new tasks and move those around as well. Because of the fractal organization system, each of these items in my to-do list is actually its own document. So by clicking on them, I can enter that document and I can use these breadcrumbs to get back to where I was. So I can expand or collapse things. I can also enter a bigger version in more full screen mode. We also here have built out a demonstration teaching journal. So here what I hope you can see is I could have a journal for each of the classes that I teach. And these are for demonstration purposes only. So we have ATSU 101 and ATSU 102. Getting into one of these, I can see I have created sections for daily notes, to-dos and fix-its, as well as a parking lot or a place to keep ideas I don't want to lose track of. In daily notes, I can have a page for each lecture or each lecture and lab. I can expand those out to keep track of how I felt during class, things that I noticed, ideas for the future, as well as other observations or notes. You can embed videos and images into your workflowy, and you can tag things, for example, next year. And by searching for that tag, I would see all the places where I've identified things to consider for next year. I can have to-dos and fix-its specifically listed for this course. And the nice thing about Workflowy is that you can have items as a normal bullet list, but you can also have things in a checklist format. So I can mark this as done and it will be struck through and turned to a lighter gray. We can also keep track of ideas for next time. And here you can see, again, that board type format where I have ideas for the next time I teach the class, something I want to consider but don't have time for right now, and then long-term ideas. Maybe these are things that you're not sure you have time for in the near future, but you don't want that idea to go away either. In addition to to-dos and teaching journals, this is a great place to keep track of notes for professional development that you've engaged in. So for example, I can expand this bullet and I can see that I can create workflows for each conference that I've attended. And these are example notes, but what I hope you can see is that I can designate them by session, I can attach links and files. And really, this is a great way to keep track of things you've heard in faculty development sessions or seminars or conference presentations to come back to over time and to think about how they might apply to your teaching practice. Lastly, like your to-do list, you might want to keep track of your professional development goals and accomplishments. And this is just one way to do that, but here you can see that we can list different things we have to do, mark them off as being done, and we can even move them around to prioritize them. These are just some examples, but I hope it gives you an idea of how you might use Workflowy for digital journaling. I hope what you can appreciate from the demo is that there are a lot of ways to do digital journaling. It can not only help us stay organized, but to keep a track of our thoughts, observations, ideas, and tasks. And we can thoughtfully engage in reflective teaching practices in the moment and have sources to come back to over time. Now I want to look at how technology can help us reflect in a different way. And here we'll talk about an opportunity to do what I'm going to call playing your teaching back. Watching ourselves or someone else perform tasks can actually engage the parts of our brain, including the premotor cortex and parietal lobe, that are related to both planning movements and that are responsible for execution and feeling about movements. What this means is that our brains are actively engaged in thinking about execution of tasks, even when we're watching a video of them being performed. Beyond the neuroscience, watching a recording can allow us to have a new vantage point or perspective, to have a new angle to see what occurred, and to maybe see what we might have missed in the moment. It also gives us time and space to consider what went well and what could be improved. Although it can be uncomfortable to watch ourselves back, engaging in this practice can be really helpful. Not only can it help us see our own mannerisms and body language, but it can help us to see things that are hard to keep track of when we're busy teaching. Like how much time did certain tasks take, or when and where did students start to get confused? It can help us notice things about the students' behaviors and their interactions with us, with the content, and with each other too. And a video recording might also help us notice aspects of the classroom environment. Like maybe the video shows us that there's a lot of glare on the screen, or it can help us confirm that the font size from the PowerPoints is pretty clear from the back of the room. So, taking this idea into consideration, we can think about different flavors of this based on the format for a course. For in-person classes, your class might already be recorded, but often those recordings go through just the microphone for the room and might focus only on the podium or the slides that are being shared. So that recording may not capture everything that you want to. And instead, or in addition, we encourage you to connect with our amazing colleagues in academic technologies, and they can help you plan and coordinate a recording. For online synchronous courses, Zoom makes it easy to record from different views, including the speaker view and gallery view. And this can be especially helpful because if you're sharing your screen on Zoom, like I am right now, it can be really difficult to see everyone's faces in those tiles or in the gallery view. It's also worth noting that if you are recording a Zoom session and you open breakout rooms, those breakout rooms will not automatically record. This idea of playing back teaching is not only for live classes, though. And adaptations to this practice for asynchronous classes might include reading through or watching your content. And this is a great place to consider how long is it taking you to do the readings for the week or do the activities for the week, and what's the experience like of watching the linked videos that you might have. You can go through weekly pages or modules with a fine-tooth comb, and I recommend looking at the instructions and thinking about how you'd respond to discussions or how you'd interpret assignment instructions if you were doing them yourself. You can review the analytics for online tools that you're using, or read through comments from students and feedback that they gave you or you gave them. And regardless of the format, the idea here is really to notice what you observe when you look with intention. As additional variants on this practice, you might consider using a digital journal as a place to record your notes and observations as you play your teaching back. But you also might share your recording or give access to your course to a colleague to help you get diverse ideas and perspectives on your teaching. In fact, this idea is quite similar to a service that the TLC provides. A teaching observation from the TLC is not an evaluation or part of HR review. Instead, it's an opportunity to have someone observe your class, take notes on what they see, and debrief to help you brainstorm ideas for the future. We wanted to share with you how some of your ATSU colleagues have benefited from this practice. Clay Walker, a faculty member in the Arizona School of Health Sciences Physician Assistant Program, recently participated in a teaching observation. When asked about his experience, he shared that engaging in the teaching observation process was an invaluable opportunity for self-reflection and professional growth. Having an objective perspective allowed me to recognize strengths I may have overlooked and identify areas for refinement in a constructive way. The experience encouraged me to be more intentional about my teaching approach and reinforced the importance of adaptability and continuous learning in education. Overall, it has deepened my appreciation for the power of feedback in fostering development. Daryl Traylor, a faculty member in the College of Graduate Health Studies Public Health Program, also recently participated in a teaching observation. And he wrote that Jay's observation of my class was an invaluable experience as he provided insightful, constructive feedback that challenged me to refine my approach to both teaching and course design. His feedback has pushed me to think more critically about the way I structure my lessons, ensuring that my teaching is not only encouraging, but also fosters deeper learning in my students. Through his feedback, I've become more intentional in how I provide feedback to my students, making sure that every comment is actionable and meaningful, while also being more deliberate in the assignment design choices that shape the overall student experience. Lastly, Tamara McLeod shared her thoughts with us about her teaching observation.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tamara McLeod. I'm the chair of the Department of Athletic Training and a professor within the Department of Athletic Training. The courses that I teach are all post-professional courses in a asynchronous online format. And so for my teaching observation, Julie and Jay looked at a couple of modules in one of my courses. And then we met for an hour discussion to talk about ways to improve student engagement, which was one of my primary goals, and also just update the look and feel of my courses. The teaching observation I thought was absolutely incredible. It was very constructive in nature. There was really no judgment or criticism, but really a focus on how can I do things somewhat differently. And some examples were very simple. I had things at the bottom of a page that they suggested I move to the top of the page. And there was a fair amount of feedback that was very positive when I implemented some of these changes. Students really commented on the organization of my courses. They thought it was very easy to navigate. And then specific to some of the instructional techniques that were used, they really enjoyed the variety in harmonized discussions, Canvas discussions, perusal, the use of Echo 360, just not having the monotonous same thing every week was really commented on by a lot of students. So for those of you that might be a little weary about being observed as an instructor, whether it's in the classroom or in the online environment, I would really encourage you to be open to the teaching observation and learning from the professionals that we have in the TLC. I will admit, I was a little nervous going in to my meeting and letting them have access to my course, but in the end, it certainly opened my eyes to some very simple changes that can really be helpful to students and also ways to improve student engagement. So I highly recommend engaging with the teaching observation through the TLC. Take care.
As Clay, Daryl, and Tamara shared in their own words, there's a lot of benefit to engaging in reflective practice, including being mindful and intentional about course design decisions. And while we're all capable of this reflection, it doesn't necessarily come easy to everyone. So, this might be a great opportunity to use AI paradoxically to help us do something quintessentially human. Chatbots might be able to help prompt us to reflect and ask follow-up questions to help us go deeper in the reflection process. If you go this route, here are a few things to think about. You can really get the most out of your experience if you give the chatbot context. You might tell the chatbot something like, I'm a professor in the health sciences who teaches all graduate level courses for adult learners. I'd like you to respond like you're a teaching and learning professional. You'll also likely get the most out of the reflection activity if you prompt the chatbot to ask you one question at a time. This is likely going to have a lot more benefit than a giant list of questions for you to consider all at once. And I encourage you to really consider each response from the chatbot before you start typing back. If you give short, cursory answers to the chatbot, it's just not going to have as much to go on to prompt you to consider next. Like with the digital journaling example, the best tool is often the one that we're most likely to use. You can use whatever chatbot you like best for this, and we'll share a ChatGPT example in the session handout for today. But I want to point out that there's already ongoing work to develop GPTs specifically for reflection. And Riff AI is an example. This tool was developed at Stanford to support reflection in an educational context. For example, on the screen, I have a snippet of a conversation I demoed with Riff. The chatbot prompted me to think about a peak experience from a recent class that I taught and to think about what made it memorable. My responses are in the black bubble, and here I told it that for me, a peak experience was seeing that aha or light bulb moment in my students when they saw their learning all come together. So then the AI commented about how that must have been really rewarding and provided me my next reflection point. It asked me, what do I think is specifically contributing to those aha moments for my students? So I shared about how this was maybe related to how the class was scaffolded, that the students did one step of a process at a time, and then at the end, they really saw all those pieces come together, which I thought paid off for them. Then Riff AI asked me how that experience might inform my perspective or my approach to teaching. So, this is just a little snippet from a bigger chat, but what I hope it shows is that this tool is set up to ask one question at a time to help you reflect on your teaching and consider the what, why, how, and maybe most importantly, the what next. Just like we want to help our students use AI ethically and responsibly, it's important that we do the same too. We want to consider data privacy as part of that, and we want to avoid sharing personal information about ourselves and our learners. You'll note in the example that I gave, I'm not sharing data from the students or their outcomes into the AI, but instead I'm sharing my personal reflection. I also encourage you to consider the environmental impacts of AI. There is a particularly large environmental impact in terms of electricity, CO2 emissions, and water use required to train the models and cool the data centers. But these resources are also required to generate the outputs that we ask for. So, to put that into context a little bit, estimates suggest that a single ChatGPT query requires nearly 10 times as much electricity as a Google search and uses approximately as much electricity as could light one light bulb for 20 minutes. Using AI to generate a 100-word email uses more than one bottle of water. And while these figures focus on text generation, I do want to note that the resources required are significantly higher for image and video generation. For example, creating one image in DALL-E likely uses the same amount of electricity as to fully charge a smartphone. Now, we all use energy and resources throughout the day to heat or cool our homes, to charge our laptops to be on this call or watch this recording, to commute to campus or to run errands. But we also take precautions to not take advantage of these resources. For example, I'll bet that when you leave the house, you turn off the lights, or you might carpool to an event. I want to encourage us to think about AI use in the same way. It can be a really valuable tool, but I would like us to think about when it's a tool that we should leverage and when we might conserve those resources. So, to recap today, we discussed how reflection and technology are not siloed ideas, but we can bring them together to synergistically support reflection. We discussed the idea of using digital tools for journaling. We talked about observing our own teaching by recording in-person and digital classrooms. And we highlighted ways in which AI can be used as a tool, particularly for when reflecting feels particularly challenging. So, as we conclude, I want to invite you to each think about what you're taking away from this session. How might you use technology in a new way to foster reflection? Or how are you currently using technology for reflection in ways beyond what we discussed today? And for those here live, I invite you to put your takeaways into the chat so that we can all learn from each other. As you start to engage with the call to action that you just considered, we want to leave you with several resources. The first is a handout that has all the links that we shared today and some additional information on the topic. We'll put this in the chat and link it in the YouTube description. I also want to remind you that the TLC has about 40 on-demand resource guides on topics including reflective teaching and AI in education. And also that the TLC's teaching observations are available for free to all ETSU faculty and staff and can be conducted for both in-person and online instruction. So I want to thank you so much for joining for today's presentation, either live or watching this recording. In just a moment, I'll open the conversation for Q&A for the folks who are here in person today. But before I do, I want to remind you about upcoming sessions in the seminar series. On April 30th, we'll hear about enhancing collaborative learning with technology-driven pedagogy. And on May 14th, we'll learn about tech tools for transforming educational research. So thank you so much.